There is a moment in life when you realize that not everyone deserves your attention. Not every insult deserves an answer. Not every provocation deserves your anger. And not every person who walks away deserves to be chased. Sometimes the most powerful thing you can do is become silent. Think about it. When someone knows exactly how to push your buttons, they have power over you. When someone can make you angry with a few words, they control your emotions. When someone's approval determines your confidence, you have handed them the key to your peace. But what happens when you stop reacting? What happens when you stop explaining yourself to people who have already decided to misunderstand you? What happens when you stop arguing with those who only want your attention? What happens when you simply look at the situation, breathe, remain calm, and choose not to participate? Something changes. You begin taking your power back. Ignoring people does not mean becoming cruel. It does not mean pretending that everyone around you is beneath you. And it certainly does not mean running away from every difficult conversation. True strength is knowing the difference between necessary communication and unnecessary reaction. There are people who will test your patience simply to see if they can control your emotions. They may provoke you, criticize you, disrespect you, or create unnecessary drama. If you react every time, you teach them that they have access to your mind. But when you become calm, when you refuse to give every situation your energy, their influence begins to disappear. Your silence becomes a boundary, your attention becomes valuable, your peace becomes protected. And this is where real personal power begins, not in making other people afraid of you, but in becoming so disciplined that other people's behavior can no longer easily disturb your inner world. You don't have to win every argument. You don't have to prove that you're right. You don't have to convince everyone of your worth. Sometimes walking away from the need to be understood is the greatest form of self-respect. The world will constantly invite you to react. Someone will misunderstand you. Someone will underestimate you. Someone will talk behind your back. Someone will try to make you feel small. The question is not whether these things will happen. The question is, will you give them control over you? Because the person who controls your attention controls a piece of your life. So today, we are going to explore why ignoring certain people can make you more powerful, how silence can protect your energy, why emotional reactions often weaken your position, and how to develop the discipline to stop giving your attention to people who do not deserve it. Remember this, you become powerful when you stop allowing everyone to have access to your emotions. Sometimes you don't need the last word. Sometimes you don't need revenge. Sometimes you don't need an explanation. Sometimes you simply need to step back, become silent, and continue becoming the person you were meant to become. Because when your peace becomes more important than proving a point, you have already entered a different level of strength, and that is where your transformation begins. The moment you stop allowing other people to control your emotions, your entire relationship with the world begins to change. Think about how much power you give away when someone can ruin your entire day with a single sentence. Someone criticizes you and you keep thinking about it for hours. Someone ignores you and suddenly you feel the need to know why. Someone disrespects you and you immediately want to prove yourself. Someone tries to provoke you, and before you even understand what is happening, you have reacted. In those moments. The other person is not simply speaking to you, they are influencing your inner state. And the more easily your emotions can be controlled from the outside, the less freedom you have on the inside. Real strength begins when you create a small space between what happens and how you respond. Someone may insult you, but you don't have to become angry. Someone may misunderstand you, but you don't have to spend hours defending yourself. Someone may try to pull you into an argument, but you can choose silence. This pause may seem small, but it is one of the greatest forms of self-mastery. You are no longer allowing someone else's behavior to decide what happens inside your mind. Many people believe power means having the strongest voice in the room. They think powerful people always have the perfect response, always win arguments, and always make others understand their position. But often, the strongest person is the one who does not need to react. They have enough control over themselves to recognize when a conversation is useful and when it is simply a trap for their attention. When you react emotionally, you reveal where someone can reach you. If anger is easy to trigger, people can use anger against you. If approval is what you constantly seek, people can control you through acceptance and rejection. If you desperately need to be understood, someone can keep you trapped in endless explanations. But when you become comfortable with silence, you remove many of these points of control. This does not mean becoming emotionless. You are human. You will feel anger, disappointment, sadness, and frustration. The goal is not to eliminate emotions. The goal is to stop becoming a prisoner of them. Feel the emotion, understand it, and then decide what deserves your response. That is the difference between emotional reaction and emotional discipline. Imagine someone deliberately trying to make you angry. They expect you to argue. They expect you to raise your voice. They expect you to defend yourself. But instead you remain calm and say nothing unnecessary. You walk away and continue with your life. You have not lost. You have simply refused to participate in a game that was designed to steal your peace. Your attention is one of your most valuable resources. Every time you give it to someone, you are giving away a piece of your life. So don't give your attention, automatically give it consciously. Protect your mind. Protect your peace. Learn to recognize when silence is more powerful than an answer, when distance is healthier than confrontation, and when walking away is not weakness but wisdom. The strongest person is not the one who can control everyone around them. It is the one who has learned to control themselves. When you reach that level, people can speak, provoke, criticize, or misunderstand you, but they no longer have easy access to your inner peace. And that is a kind of power no one can take away from you. Silence has a strange kind of power because it forces people to confront the absence of your attention. When you are always available, always responding, always explaining, and always defending yourself, people can begin to believe that they have unlimited access to your energy. They know you will answer every message, respond to every criticism, defend every decision, and enter every argument. But the moment you stop reacting to everything, something changes. You begin to communicate without saying much. My attention is valuable, and I will not waste it on things that do not deserve it. Many people misunderstand silence. They think silence means weakness, fear, or having nothing to say. But there is a difference between being silent because you are afraid and being silent because you are disciplined. One comes from insecurity, the other comes from self-control. A person who cannot control their emotions feels compelled to respond immediately. A person who has developed inner strength can pause and ask, "Does this deserve my energy?" Sometimes the answer is yes. Very often it is no. You do not have to answer every accusation. You do not have to correct every misunderstanding. You do not have to prove your character to every person who questions it. The more you try to convince everyone of your worth, the more dependent you become on their opinions. Your life becomes a continuous performance, where you are constantly trying to demonstrate that you are good enough, strong enough, successful enough, or worthy enough. But when you stop seeking validation from every person around you, you become much freer. Silence also changes the way people perceive your attention. If you give your attention to everyone equally, it loses its meaning. But when your attention is intentional, it becomes valuable. You begin choosing where to place your energy. You listen carefully to people who matter. You speak when your words can create something useful. And when a conversation becomes nothing more than provocation, gossip, or pointless conflict, you know how to step away. This is especially important when dealing with people who constantly seek reactions. Some people do not want understanding. They want engagement. They provoke because your emotional response gives them satisfaction. They criticize because they want you to defend yourself. They create drama because drama gives them attention. If you continue responding, the cycle continues. But when you stop feeding the cycle, it loses its fuel. That does not mean you should ignore legitimate problems or avoid necessary conversations. Healthy strength requires communication. If someone crosses an important boundary, you may need to speak clearly and firmly. But after you have communicated your position, you do not need to repeat yourself endlessly. A boundary becomes meaningful when you are willing to enforce it through your actions. There is also something powerful about not explaining yourself to people who are committed to misunderstanding you. You can spend hours trying to change someone's opinion, but if they have already decided what they want to believe, your explanations may never be enough. At some point, you must understand that peace is sometimes more valuable than being understood. When you stop chasing the last word, you gain something far greater than victory in an argument. You gain control over yourself. You begin to realize that every response has a cost, and not every situation is worth paying that cost. Your silence becomes a deliberate decision. Your attention becomes selective, and your energy becomes focused. The world will always give you reasons to react. Your power comes from deciding which reasons deserve you. When you learn to protect your attention instead of giving it away impulsively, you stop living according to other people's behavior and start living according to your own values. And that is when silence stops being empty space and becomes a quiet expression of strength. Not everyone deserves unlimited access to your time, your thoughts, or your emotional energy. One of the most important lessons in personal growth is learning that walking away from certain people is not an act of hatred. It is an act of self-respect. You can care about someone and still decide that their behavior is no longer healthy for your life. You can forgive someone and still create distance. You can wish someone well without allowing them to continue disturbing your peace. There are people who enter your life and leave you stronger, wiser, and more peaceful. Then there are people who constantly leave you exhausted. Every conversation becomes an argument. Every interaction becomes criticism. Every success becomes something they try to minimize. Every boundary becomes a challenge. You explain yourself, they twist your words. You try to create peace, they create another conflict. You give understanding but receive disrespect in return. When this pattern continues, the problem is no longer one bad conversation. It becomes a pattern that deserves your attention. The mistake many people make is believing that loyalty requires them to tolerate everything. They remain in unhealthy relationships because they are afraid of being called selfish. They keep answering messages because they feel guilty. They continue explaining themselves because they hope the other person will eventually change. But you cannot force someone to become respectful simply by giving them more access to you. Sometimes the most mature response is distance. Distance gives you perspective. When you are constantly surrounded by someone's negativity, you may begin to believe that their behavior is normal. You become accustomed to being criticized, manipulated, interrupted, or emotionally drained. But when you step back, you can finally observe the situation clearly. You begin asking yourself, why am I accepting this? Why do I feel responsible for someone else's behavior? Why am I sacrificing my peace just to keep this connection alive? Those questions can change your life. Walking away does not always mean physically leaving someone forever. Sometimes it means reducing your availability. Sometimes it means refusing to participate in unnecessary arguments. Sometimes it means stopping the habit of sharing every detail of your life with people who do not genuinely support you. And sometimes it means completely closing a door that has repeatedly brought pain into your life. Your energy should have a direction. If you spend all of it dealing with people who constantly drain you, you have less energy left for your goals, your family, your work, your health, and your own development. You cannot build a powerful life while continuously giving your best energy to unnecessary drama. This is why boundaries matter. A boundary is not a punishment. It is a decision about what you will and will not allow into your life. You do not need to announce every boundary dramatically. You can simply change your behavior, stop responding immediately, stop arguing, stop explaining, stop chasing, stop trying to earn respect from people who repeatedly choose to disrespect you. And remember, walking away does not make you weak. Sometimes staying requires less courage than leaving, because familiarity can feel safer than freedom. But when you choose peace over constant conflict, growth over attachment, and self-respect over approval, you begin to understand your own value. You don't need to carry every person with you into your future. Some people are lessons, some are companions, and some are simply chapters that eventually need to close. Your responsibility is not to keep every relationship alive. Your responsibility is to protect the person you are becoming. Real power begins when you stop trying to control everyone around you and start mastering yourself. Many people spend their lives trying to change other people's opinions, reactions, attitudes, and behavior. They want respect, so they demand it. They feel ignored, so they chase attention. They feel disrespected, so they seek revenge. They become angry because someone else is angry. In this way, they allow the outside world to become the remote control for their inner life. But the moment you realize that your greatest responsibility is not controlling others, but controlling yourself, your entire perspective changes. You cannot decide what another person will say about you. You cannot decide whether someone will respect you, misunderstand you, criticize you, or walk away from you. You cannot force someone to appreciate your efforts or recognize your value, but you can decide how you respond. You can decide whether their words deserve your attention. You can decide whether anger will control your next action. You can decide whether you will remain focused on your purpose instead of becoming distracted by someone else's behavior. That is where self-mastery begins. Imagine someone insults you in front of other people. Your first instinct may be to respond immediately. You may want to defend yourself, raise your voice, or say something even more painful in return. But what happens if you pause? What happens if you breathe and realize that you don't need to prove your strength through anger? You may discover that the most powerful response is sometimes a calm response. This does not mean accepting disrespect or allowing people to cross your boundaries. Self-control is not weakness. You can be firm without being aggressive. You can say no without shouting. You can walk away without creating a scene. You can protect yourself without becoming the same kind of person who hurt you. The person who has mastered themselves does not need to win every battle. They understand that some battles are distractions. They know that every argument consumes energy, every emotional reaction creates consequences, and every unnecessary conflict takes attention away from what truly matters. Think about how much energy is wasted trying to prove yourself. You want someone to understand your intentions. You want someone to admit they were wrong. You want someone to recognize what you have accomplished. You want someone who underestimated you to regret it. But the more you chase these things, the more dependent your happiness becomes on other people's reactions. Eventually, you must reach a point where you say, I know who I am. I know what I am working toward. I do not need everyone to understand me. That mindset creates freedom. Your goal should not be to become untouchable because nothing affects you. Your goal should be to become stable enough that you can experience difficult emotions without allowing those emotions to make your decisions for you. Anger can appear without becoming aggression. Disappointment can appear without becoming bitterness. Fear can appear without becoming paralysis. Someone else's rejection can hurt without becoming a reason to abandon your own worth. This is true strength, feeling everything, but choosing your actions consciously. When you master yourself, other people lose their ability to easily manipulate you. They may still speak, they may still criticize, they may still attempt to provoke you, but they cannot decide what you become because you have taken responsibility for your own mind. And once you stop trying to control everyone else, you discover something much more valuable. The person you have the greatest power to transform has been yourself all along. Before you leave this video, remember one thing. Your power does not come from making people fear you. Your power comes from no longer allowing people to control you. You don't need to answer every insult. You don't need to explain yourself to everyone. You don't need to chase people who choose to walk away. And you certainly don't need to prove your worth to those who are committed to misunderstanding you. Sometimes silence is the answer. Sometimes distance is the answer. Sometimes walking away is the answer. And sometimes the greatest victory is simply remaining calm while someone is desperately trying to disturb your peace. The moment you stop reacting to everything, you begin seeing things differently. You stop wasting energy on unnecessary arguments. You stop seeking approval from people who don't value you. You stop allowing temporary emotions to control permanent decisions, and slowly you become more disciplined, more focused, and more powerful from within. But remember, ignoring people should never be about revenge. It should be about self-control. It should be about knowing where your attention belongs. Your attention is your life. Give it carefully. So the next time someone tries to provoke you, pause. Ask yourself, does this deserve my energy? If the answer is no, stay calm. Stay focused. Walk away. Because not every battle deserves your presence, and not every person deserves access to your peace. And perhaps the most powerful person in the room is not the loudest one. It is the person who can remain silent, remain composed, and continue moving forward while everyone else is demanding a reaction. So protect your peace, master your emotions, choose your battles, build yourself quietly. Let people wonder why you no longer react. Let your growth become the answer they never expected. If this message gave you a new perspective, don't just listen to it, practice it. Take one lesson from this video and apply it to your life today. Thank you for spending your valuable time with us. If you believe in becoming stronger, calmer, more disciplined, and mentally powerful, make sure to support the channel by liking this video, subscribing, and turning on notifications for more powerful wisdom and motivational content. Until the next video, remember, protect your peace, control your response, and never give someone else the power to control your mind.